Definition. Here's a general one so you can understand the overview. 30 to 35 minute duration is what you can run CV at. So that's 90% of VO2 max, not the velocity, they're different. But as a general rule, half an hour is about the pace you can sustain CV. It's really easy to convey this information to other people. If you're a coach, you just simply say to your athletes, this is the pace you can hold for half an hour. If you're out there running the workout yourself, all you do is just remind yourself when you're doing each repetition, can I hold this for half an hour? If so, then you're pretty darn close to what you need to be. Another way of defining it is somewhat hard training pace. Not hard, not moderate, it's somewhere between. It's a little bit harder than threshold by about 5%. What does it do? It improves the aerobic ability of type 2 muscle fibers. Type 2A in particular, which are the intermediate, they're highly malleable. One of the beauties of human physiology is that we have some ability to modify the functional capacity of our cells. And in this one in particular, type 2A muscle fibers can be changed towards the anaerobic end or towards the aerobic end, depending upon the stimulus induced. So, for example, if you decide to do repeat 400s at nearly flat out pace with very long recoveries, you will change your fast 2 type A muscle fibers into really great producers of energy in a hurry through anaerobic glycolysis. The problem with it is it induces a huge amount of muscular fatigue, intramuscular fatigue. You can't do very many repetitions. The problem though is, from a racing standpoint, unless you're running the 800 meters, which does have a huge component of anaerobic capacity, you're really shooting yourself in the foot in terms of being able to create a sustainable capacity to hold high speed. So what you really want to do instead is do critical velocity training where you slow down the pace a bit to roughly half an hour race pace, and you'll change those fast 2 muscle fibers, type 2As, into consumers of oxygen and producers of sustained power. And the benefit is a much faster ability, or much faster pace you can sustain in a mile race, to 3K race, 5K, 10K, and I even argue all the way up to the marathon. I've even had ultra marathoners. I had the #1 ultra marathon in America. He won the Mount Fuji race in Japan, and he thrived on critical velocity despite the fact that he was running ultra marathons too. So, what else does it do? Well, this is really Harry Wilson type mentality. It improves the average cruising speed. Think of it this way, can you cruise along and not produce fatigue? That's the whole idea of successful training, and critical velocity does exactly that. What else does it do? It improves the distance from the finish line where you can start your kick. Okay? Rather than waiting for the last 200 meters, if you're racing on the track before you can give your all-out sprint, you might be able to go 3 or 4 or even 500 meters at a high speed without getting tired. This is a really big deal. You may not be the fastest sprinter in the field, but if you have phenomenal stamina through critical velocity training, you can start your kick farther out, and you can make everybody else hurt who has this great sprint speed. A great example of that is Drew Hunter, whom I've coached. When he was competing against Grant Fisher, who had 48-second quarter-mile speed in high school. Grant was a senior, Drew was a junior. He went out to the Brooks Invitational in Seattle to run a 2-mile. I instructed Drew to start his kick 500 meters out, get to the front 500 meters out, and start pressing the hammer down. Because I knew he'd done a ton of critical velocity training. I knew his fast fibers had a great aerobic ability, and I suspected that Grant would not be able to handle that long sustained kick. Grant wanted to wait until the last 250 or 300 and just fly right past Drew. Never happened, because Drew just kept pressing down the pace, starting from 500 meters out, and Grant never beat him. Same thing happened the following week when they went to Eugene, Oregon for the under 20 junior nationals. Blake Haney beat Drew, but Drew beat Grant Fisher once again. So there's an example, because you're looking at a 3-second differential in their 400-meter open speed. Drew had never broken 51 seconds. Grant could run 48, but Grant could not outkick Drew because Drew had better stamina through critical velocity training. Examples of critical velocity workouts. Let's say you have a 10-flat 3,200-meter runner. Typical high school kid is a pretty decent male runner. That would be an exceptionally good female runner. The maximum I would ever assign is 8 repetitions of 1 kilometer with 200 jog recoveries. Okay? So if you think about, in this case, we're talking maybe 315, 320 per kilometer is CV pace. So we're talking in the neighborhood of mid-20s, 25, 26, 27 minutes of CV total training. Okay? What would I normally assign? Probably 5 to 7 repetitions of a kilometer with 200 jog recoveries, and then I tack on a little bit of quicker stuff that's shorter. I don't believe in isolation training. I think it's a flawed concept, but here's an example of something that I would do. I might assign 6 times a kilometer for this 10-flat 3,200-meter runner with 200 jog recoveries, and then immediately, or within 3 minutes, go into 6 times 200 at roughly their 1 mile racing speed, and perhaps later in the season, if they're closer and closer to their championship event, I might have them move on to 800-meter racing effort or pace. You don't always have to go by pace. You can simply go with a perceived effort, and it works great. It really does. Yesterday, 3 of my elites, Drew, Tyler, and Reed, did a workout over in Denver. I supervised it, and they did target pace because it was on a measured course. The day was beautiful. There wasn't much wind, and even though it's 42 degrees, it was a great day to train. So, but all winter long, most of the time, I've assigned it in fartlek form. So, in other words, for those guys, I might assign, say, 7 times 3 minutes at CV effort, which is roughly half-hour racing effort, with a minute jog recovery, which is roughly their 200. And then I would have them do 7 repetitions of 30 seconds at roughly their mile to half-mile racing speed with a minute jog recovery or less. And that basically substitutes for this prescribed interval workout on a measured course. Okay?